Hello, Warrior, and happy Father's Day. Today, we're going to talk about why dads are so important. And as you can see, I'm actually on location at my dad's shop where we do car restoration. Just kind of coming back. I come back and help him occasionally. And so it's a great setting and a great place to be able to do this video where we talk about Father's Day. So let's jump into it. Warrior. Once again, my name is Lawrence Stone, and I am the basic trainer, and I do want to establish rhythm to your vision, and especially to you fathers out there. Happy Father's Day, and know how important you are, and the importance of your presence in your home. I'm actually gonna. I've found some statistics that I wanted to share with you, and this is from fathersplace.org. They report that you are that your children or when fathers are involved in their children's lives, they're 2 times more likely to go to college. They're 80% less likely to go to jail or spend time in jail, and 75% less likely to experience teen pregnancy. They also found that homes where the father is absent, 71% of all high school dropouts come from father absent homes. 90% of homeless and runaway children come from fatherless homes, and 63% of youth suicides come from fatherless homes. So, by being a presence in your children's lives, you decrease the likelihood of these things happening. And I I want to share with you the importance that fathers and father figures have been in my life. My dad has been an absolute phenomenal influence for me growing up. I know I talked about my mom on Mother's Day. She helped influence me with music. Well, my dad helped influence me with cars. Although my dad did like to play music too. He was a guitarist and really pushed me in music as well. But my dad was always passionate about cars, working on cars, restoring cars. I don't ever remember a time when my dad didn't have a project car. I remember times even before he opened the shop, he had at least three at one point. Multiple times there was more than one project car. The truck I drove all through high school was a truck that we had to replace the engine on. That truck was my education, and I worked on it with my dad, at least as far as cars go. So my dad was a real important person, and one thing for me is he was someone who was always there that I felt like I could talk to and communicate with. And we weren't great at communicating. I won't say we were the best at it, but I was never afraid. I mean, I could hesitate sometimes when I wanted to tell my dad about things that were bothering me or things that I was going through, but never to the point that I felt like I couldn't do that. And even if I was embarrassed or whatever, I could always talk to my dad, and I was always grateful for that. And he helped me learn things and help me know things. And so I will forever be grateful that he always encouraged me to learn and grow. He set an example. I remember him taking night classes to finish his master's degree while I was in high school. And education was always an important thing for me and or for him. And he always encouraged me to do that. And as I got older, there's still lessons that he teaches me. And when I came back to work with him in cars, I was able to teach him about selling cars and some things in that area. And he was able to teach me more about working on cars, and we're able to learn and grow together. And so I appreciate that. But as I thought about this email, I thought about other people who've taught me important lessons in my life that are part of the fathers in my family, if you will. And I looked at my grandfathers, and I've thought about this many times before. I learned valuable lessons from all of my grandfathers, and I was blessed to have three grandfathers, two biological grandfathers, and one you could refer to him as a step grandfather. He married into our family when I was a baby, but I've always known him as my grandfather, and I've always cared for him, and I've never seen him as anything else. And with my granddad, my mom's dad, I think I've said this before. I consider him to probably be, after my parents, the most influential person in my life. I remember going up and spending summers with him. A couple of weeks out of the year. We lived in Utah, and he was up in Idaho, and he taught me how to drive his tractor and use a riding lawnmower. And I mowed his lawn pretty much up until the moment he had to move out of his final home. I helped him take care of his lawn, but he taught me a lot about hard work. And that was one thing that he was a phenomenal example of, is going out and working hard. I remember he told my mom that if he had died out in the field somewhere while he was working, we knew that he died happy because he loved work. I mean, can you imagine people in today's world saying they love work? That's a struggle. Everyone tries to avoid work, but work gives us such a great purpose and being. And because he worked hard, he influenced so many people, and he was able to do so many great things with that influence that he had because he worked. And then we look at my grandpa, my dad's dad, Grandpa Stone. He was big into education as well. He actually was a chemistry professor at a junior college. He started off at a high school level and moved on to a college level, collegiate level. And it was interesting because you think you'd go and talk to him and he would be talking about science, and he invented and came up with some interesting things. Back during the gas crisis in the 70s, he actually came up with a product to help improve fuel economy. And that was actually my dad's first job, was selling that product as a teenager, and he was doing better than these other guys who were in their 20s and 30s that supposedly knew more. But my dad, because he was such a car guy, was able to sell this product for my grandpa. And one of the tricks that my grandpa taught him, and I don't know the whole physics of it or the chemical composition of it, but he put a specific chemical that didn't affect the product, but it changed the color of it. And so that way anyone who would try to duplicate it would be looking at the wrong chemicals. So that way no one could duplicate what he was doing, and he could own that. And anyone who tried to duplicate what he had built, they got it wrong every time because he knew they would do that. And so he just put something in there to change the color and throw them off the scent. And you can see you got my son sneaking around behind me too. But interestingly enough, whenever we get together and talk about things that we've studied, he and I always connect with history. I'm very much a context person. I love history. I love reading biographies. And for a while, I was really into ancient history, kind of more of these are kind of speculations we're not as sure about kind of history. And I really liked that. And I like studying ancient history. And we would have conversations on ancient civilizations. He was very studious into history, and always recommending books. He has like a library where I could just go and he would loan me books and tell me, oh, I recommend this book. You go into his house and he's got a closet full of binders of notes that he has taken, all about history. So I love learning with him, and my passion for history is something I definitely shared with him. And so education is a big thing that he taught me and he ingrained in me. So we have work from one grandfather, education, learning from another grandfather, and then my other grandfather. One might be considered my step grandfather, but again, I always saw him as my grandfather, Grandpa Everett. He was a good person, and I remember the big overwhelming thing I remember with him. He was a Navy veteran. He was a tough guy, but he was one of these, could be gruff, but also very soft, caring, and giving. And one of the big lessons I learned from him growing up was about love. Because here it was, this man who married into this family where most of the kids and most of his kids were already grown up, already grandkids coming along. I wasn't the oldest grandchild in the family by any stretch. My dad had two older sisters, and there were other grandkids coming along by the time he came in, and he loved all of us. At least I remember feeling very deeply in my family how much he loved myself and my sisters and our family. And I never at any moment, any point in time, ever felt like he wasn't a part of our family. And as I got older, looking back at that, I realized what a big thing that is, because it happens all the time where you get mixed families and people aren't cared for. And I remember at one point we were camping and something happened. I won't go into the details, but something happened, and it could have felt like it wasn't a good, comfortable situation. And needless to say, the I guess you could call him the aggressor, the other party that was there, we kept our distance from each other. But I remember him more than anyone staring them down and kind of staying close to my sisters and being just kind of giving them the stare down, like it didn't matter what age he was going to do what he had to protect his grandbabies. And he talked about it later on, how he was ready to protect his grandbabies, that you're not going to upset or disrupt his grandbabies. And that experience overwhelmingly stood out to me. Like, yeah, that was one of those things that how I really knew that even though he had married into our family, he loved us. And it helped solidify the fact that I knew that I could love him. And so he was a great example to me for love. So my dad, overwhelmingly, just a good mentor for me growing up, encouraging me to pursue my passions, and overwhelmingly taught me all of these things: work, education, and love. But I even have these three grandfathers that, again, all three of these grandfathers taught me all three of these things, but they each stand out as something individually that I especially look to in them. And these are characteristics and attributes that I want to exemplify in my life and I want to carry on to my kids. And I'm grateful to all these father figures who help teach them to me and help me understand them. Again, your assignment, just like with Mother's Day, it's Father's Day coming up. Call your dad, talk to your dad, tell them how much you love them, and tell them something you appreciate about them that they taught you. Okay. And I know, again, some of you are in a situation where you might not be able to talk to your dad. Maybe there's a severed relationship, or maybe they passed away, or whatever. Go out into nature, find a spot where you can sit down and just say out loud the things that you want to say to them, and take a moment and pause and feel a response. Think of a response, and think of a good, positive response, a loving response, because they're your fathers and they love you, and it's going to help you out. So fathers, again, I want to encourage you, go out and do your thing. Help your children, help your family establish that rhythm to their vision so they can do amazing things. Just watch what happens.